Namaste. Hi, I'm Stephen Ewashkiw. Thanks for joining me. This is a 15-minute Ujjayi Pranayama lesson. This is really part 2 in a series of 3 parts that I'm doing. You can find part 1 and 3 in the library if you're interested in finding out more about the other aspects of Ujjayi Pranayama that I am focusing on. Because this is part 2, I'm not going to really go into what Ujjayi means or what Pranayama means. We're going to focus mostly on what's happening in your belly when you practice Ujjayi Pranayama. And if you're interested in the other parts, what's happening at the bottom of your pelvis and what's happening at your throat, bottom of the pelvis is part 1, what's happening in your throat is part 3. We will get to practicing Ujjayi Pranayama in this class, but first I'm going to talk to you about what's happening in your belly. So, one of the benefits of Ujjayi Pranayama is that we steady our breath, and therefore we are actually holding our breath in our lungs a little bit longer than we would if we were just doing our sahaja or our regular breath. How that works is that you steady your breath as you draw it in, and so you pull it in fully into your lungs, and then pause for just a brief moment. And with your exhale, you control the exhale of the breath rather than just pushing it all out at the beginning of your exhale, which is quite natural when we do natural breathing, that we push most of the breath out early in the exhale. But with Ujjayi Pranayama, we work to control the movement of the diaphragm so that the breath is exhaled steadily. That actually keeps some of your breath in your lungs for longer, so that your body has more time to extract the oxygen from your lungs to feed your blood, to keep you energized, to make you victorious in your breath and in your practice. So when we control the breath, we're actually kind of working against nature. So it's a restriction of prana, a restriction of your energy, pranayama. And the restriction that we're bringing in is working to not let your belly move out or in very much, or even maybe at all, when you breathe in Ujjayi Pranayama. Normally when we breathe, when we inhale, our belly moves out. When we exhale, our belly moves in. Partly this is because of the movement of the diaphragm. Partly it's because it's just what we've always done and it feels natural. But when we bring in the control, the restriction or the yama of Ujjayi Pranayama, one of the yamas is the restriction of the movement of our belly. Now there's a muscle involved in this to keep the belly still while the other muscle, the diaphragm, is doing its job. So the diaphragm kind of lives under the line of your rib cage. And when you inhale, the diaphragm flexes. It moves down. And that actually pulls the bottom of your lungs down. It pulls a suction of air in your chest cavity and pulls air into your lungs. It's pretty cool. I think the way the body works is really amazing. And then when you exhale, the diaphragm actually relaxes and it goes back up into the bottom of your ribs and it pushes the air out of your lungs. There's more involved in inhaling and exhaling. We use lots of other muscles in those actions. But the diaphragm is one of the main muscles involved in inhaling. The diaphragm flexes, and exhaling, the diaphragm relaxes. Now, that doesn't really mean that your belly has to move out and in. So what we're going to do is use another muscle. It's called the transverse abdominis. Don't worry. But if you've come to my classes or you're doing my classes online, you'll definitely hear me talk about the transverse abdominis because it's a really important muscle in our yoga practice. It tells you kind of what it does in its name, though. So it's Latin. So again, like, don't worry about being able to name it. But transverse. It traverses the abdominis. So it goes around or across the abdomen. It actually starts right at the back of your body. It starts at the sides of the rib cage, and it moves all the way around from the spine, sides of the rib cage, around your waist, and to the front of your belly. It's a deep layer of muscles. So it's not the six-pack, it's not the front of your abdomen that you can see if you're like doing a lot of sit-ups or a lot of core work. It's not even the obliques, the sides of your waist. It's underneath the internal obliques, the external obliques, and the rectus abdominis. So it's the deepest layer of muscle at the front of your body. but it is part of your abdomen. It's just part of your deep core. So because it's part of the deep core, it's working all the time. It's working all the time when you take a step, when you lift an arm, when you're moving pretty much like any way in yoga, your transverse abdominis will be doing subtle engagement. We want to bring a little bit more control into it, just like we do with all sorts of aspects of our practice. We bring more conscious engagement to things we just do naturally. Bringing more conscious engagement to our transverse abdominis is going to help you keep your belly still while you're breathing. Also, toning your transverse abdominis is part of Uddiyana Bandha. So in part 1, I talk about toning your pelvic floor and how that is synonymous with Mula Bandha. Well, this work of toning your belly for Ujjayi Pranayama is synonymous with Uddiyana Bandha, or the upward flying lock. Uddiyana means upward flying or uplifting, and bandhas are locks. These are energy locks or muscle locks that help lift us up and support us. So, what does this mean? Let's try things. Sit up tall. Place your hand on your belly. Now don't change the way your belly moves when you breathe. Just notice. Inhale and exhale. It doesn't matter how much your belly moves. Just notice that it almost certainly is moving some as you inhale and exhale. And then relax. It's not that there is anything wrong with your belly moving. That's just normal. Don't worry. But when we do Ujjayi Pranayama, we're kind of like not being normal. We're being yogis, and we're doing this special form of breathing that's going to help build more nitric oxide to help us stay healthy. That's going to help us extract more oxygen from our lungs to help us stay energized. Right? And there are other benefits to Ujjayi Pranayama, but those are the ones that I've talked about so far. In part 1, we talked about nitric oxide. In part 2, we're talking a bit about oxygen. Now, find the bony bits at the front of your pelvis. Those 2 bony bits have very fancy scientific names, but don't worry about them. We usually call them hip points in yoga, so we'll call them hip points today. So find them, touch them, and then take your fingers just to the inside edge of there, to your belly. But just inside, like don't go to the navel, don't even go halfway to the navel, just roll your fingers inside, and then do a pretend cough. And notice that something happens underneath your fingers. You feel muscles flex. Because you're just inside the hip points, it's not the rectus abdominis muscle. It's not the six-pack muscle that's flexing. It is flexing, but that's not what you're feeling. It might be your obliques a little bit that you're feeling, but most of what you're feeling is this muscle I mentioned, the transverse abdominis, the one that traverses your abdomen. So feel it again. Touch there and do a little cough. Right? That's this muscle that I want you to consciously engage. Take your fingers back to your hip points. Now, you might remember if you've done part 1 that we talked about how the 2 sides of the pelvis do move a little bit independently. So we can move our hip points towards each other by engaging our transverse abdominis. So touch your hip points, and then as if you're tightening up around your waist, so pulling string from the back of your spine around the sides and towards the front, tighten up the sides of your waist, the front of your waist, and move your hip points towards each other. It's not a very big action. It's a pretty subtle action, but then try and do it as much as you can. And then relax, because that's a lot. If you were watching me, like my face gets all distorted when I try and do it as much as I can. So we don't want to do it as much as you can. Just like when we were toning our pelvic floor, we kind of want to do like 25%, or like a quarter of our full effort. So touch your hip points, move them towards each other just a little bit. It's a little bit of like tightening your waist up, drawing your waist back towards your spine. Relax. Take one hand so that the center of your palm is over your belly. It's kind of tightening up from the edge of your fingers, the heel of your hand, in towards the center of your hand. So you can try that. Just a little, like as if you're gripping your belly just a little. And then move it back towards your spine. And then lift up a little bit. Relax. That is Uddiyana Bandha. It's the toning of the transverse abdominis with a little lift, which is why Uddiyana is the upward flying block. If you've done part one, the instructions I give to the pelvic floor will make more sense to you than if you haven't, probably, because I'll use the same language. But if you haven't done part one of this class, it doesn't matter. Just do your best. We're going to do some Ujjayi Pranayama. Mostly we'll focus on what's happening at your waist. Sit up tall. Move the sides of your pelvis in, so move your sit bones towards each other a little. Move the front and back of your pelvis towards each other. Move your pubic bone back, move your tailbone forward. Just a little. Tone your pelvic floor. And then get a little lift away from whatever you're sitting on, so the bottom of your pelvis lifts up. If you practice the bandhas, do a gentle mula bandha. Then touch your hip points. Very gently move them in towards each other. Place one hand over your navel. Move your belly back towards your spine and give your belly a little lift. If you're doing what I'm doing, you may have just noticed you sat up straighter. Breathe through your nose. Place your hand back on your lap, or on your thighs. Breathe through your nose. Now work to keep that slight toning at the bottom of your pelvis, but I want you to especially focus on what's happening at your belly. If you draw your waist in a little, back towards your spine, and give it a little lift, as you inhale through your nose and exhale through your nose, you can control the movement of your belly so that it's not moving out and in. Let's work on that. Tone your belly, draw it back towards your spine, and lift up. And inhale and exhale steadily through your nose. What you might notice is that your breath is now moving more fully through your rib cage. Your lungs are expanding more in all directions, out to the sides, out to the back, and out to the front, and down in towards the bottom of your rib cage. This toning of the belly not only helps you steady your breath, helps you control your inhale and exhale, it also helps you focus the expansion of your lungs. Tone your pelvic floor. Tighten up your belly a little. Draw the sides of your hip points in. Move your belly back towards your spine slightly and give it a little lift. And let's do some breathing together. I'm going to count our breath to a count of 3. Wherever you are in your breath, exhale so that we can breathe together. At the bottom of your exhale, just hold your breath out so that we can all catch up. And then push your breath out even more. When you push your breath out to the very bottom of your breath, you will notice, hopefully, that your pelvic floor tones, because it happens when you push all of your breath out. Work to keep that subtle engagement. Tone your belly, give it a little lift. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Work to keep your belly still as you exhale. 3, 2, 1. Pause. Work to keep your belly still as you inhale. 1, 2, 3. Tone your belly, give it a little lift. Exhale. 3, 2, 1. Pause. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Pause. Exhale. 3, 2, 1. Do a few rounds like this on your own. down the bottom of your pelvis. Keep your hip points moving in towards each other just a little. Move the space around your belly back and lift it up into the bottom of your rib cage. At the bottom of your next exhale, release your Ujjayi Pranayama. Relax your legs, relax the bottom of your pelvis, relax your belly. Take a couple of longer inhales, longer exhales. And then start to soften your breath and just return to your natural breathing. We call that sahaja. In vinyasa classes, we often ask you to practice Ujjayi Pranayama as you're moving through the vinyasa. But because of the speed of the classes, because of the length of time we don't have time to really fully teach you Ujjayi Pranayama. But I really strongly believe that learning how to do anything we regularly practice is important. And learning how to deepen your Ujjayi Pranayama is going to transform the way that you move through the vinyasa practice, the way that you are able to stay with the vinyasa practice, the way that you're able to be victorious at the end of class. And victory at the end of yoga class is being able to get up from Shavasana and go out into the world and have the rest of your day. I hope that this class was useful and you found it beneficial and educational. And I hope that it helps you transform your practice. We'll also be doing a part 3 of this class where we're going to focus on what's happening in your throat. And with those 3 parts together, I really hope that you'll have a better understanding of your Ujjayi Pranayama and what it is that we're asking you to do. If you've got any questions, you can message me, you can find me on social media and send me a message, and I'll be happy to answer. Thanks for being here. Namaste.
Thanks for practicing. If you'd like to do another class with me, you can click right there and add that class to your watch later list. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, just quickly click my picture over there and subscribe. Thanks, homies. See you soon.